My name is Olivia, and I turned 68 this year. At the end of last year, my husband, who I lived with, suddenly passed away from cancer, and I found myself moving in with my eldest son, Noah. Originally, my husband and I lived in the detached house where Noah's family now resides. When Noah got married and had a child, we moved to a nearby one-bedroom apartment, passing the house to Noah and his family. Noah had started his own business, and with an unstable income and an inability to take out a loan, my husband decided to give up the house for the sake of his grandson. When we handed over the house, it was beautifully renovated and felt brand new. After that, Noah was blessed with 3 children. We occasionally played with our grandchildren and celebrated birthdays together at a nearby restaurant, maintaining a good relationship. However, when my husband's cancer was discovered and understood to be terminal, he worried about my well-being. He called Noah and asked him to take care of me and live together once he was gone. I tried to reassure my husband, telling him that I was still healthy and could live alone, but he wouldn't budge. Unable to defy his father's last wish, Noah agreed to live with me. The truth is, ever since we gave up the house, I hadn't been inside Noah's home. I hesitated to visit, thinking his wife, Emma, might not appreciate it. So when I arrived, I encountered a shocking scene. Trying not to be a burden, I had minimized my belongings when I moved to Noah's house. The house was a small 2-bedroom with 1 room on the 2nd floor and 1 on the 1st. When I arrived, Noah said, "Oh, is today the moving day?" Acting clueless. Noah has always been forgetful, a trait that didn't change even in that moment. Entering the house, I saw shoes piled up like a mountain, and there was a strange smell. From the outside, the house looked fine, so I was taken aback. Without showing much concern, Noah muttered, "I only took you in because Dad said so, and honestly, there's no space here," before turning his back and going inside. With no other choice, I quietly followed him in. The 1st floor was cluttered, and the living and dining areas were filled with shopping bags and trash. It looked like the garbage houses you see on TV. And I was stunned. Emma, Noah's wife, then rose from the sofa. "Mom, I don't have extra beds, so please make some space," she said, and then added, "I'm tired from work." Before lying back down, she runs a beauty salon and, according to Noah, earns quite well. When I looked at Noah, he said, "I'm also tired from work, so could you clean up the room a bit?" and went upstairs. As I started to organize the cluttered room, Emma shouted, "Hey, the stuff in the corridor is in the way." I quickly replied, "I'm sorry," and moved things aside. She added, "It's fine to clean, but don't throw anything away," and returned to the living room. After tidying up, I was exhausted. I peeked in and said, "Aren't you going to help with dinner? I'm not your servant." Realizing it was already dinner time, I jumped up and hurried to the kitchen. As expected, the kitchen was a mess, but Emma seemed unfazed, frying a lot of meat. When I asked if I could help, she pointed to the dishes and said, "You can do the dishes. I thought you'd order food delivery for occasions like this," sounding rather displeased. For a moment, I wondered about the norms in this house. Nevertheless, I responded with a smile, "I'm sorry I wasn't thoughtful. Today was hectic, but how about ordering food delivery tomorrow?" This seemed to improve her mood a bit as she replied with a faint smile, "Yes, let's do that." Trying to be understanding, I thought about how messy the house was with 3 kids and Emma working as a salon manager. That evening's dinner was just a pile of meat and bread, with no vegetables or soup. Interestingly, despite living in such a messy house, Emma was particular about clothes. She insisted on washing anything worn once and was strict with her kids about not dirtying their outfits. All of our family members were always well-dressed outside, so until now, we didn't notice the state of the house. I began cleaning diligently the next day. Of course, for things I couldn't determine as trash or not, I neatly lined them up and had Emma check them when she returned from work. With the sheer amount of garbage, I asked her for confirmation almost every day, and she started to sound dismissive, often saying, "It's okay, just throw it away." I didn't really want to touch other people's belongings, but the clutter was too much. Also, it was originally our house. Living in the house I once cherished, seeing it in such disarray made me sad. After about a month, I finally finished sorting the garbage, and the house started to look decent. The grandchildren joyfully expressed how it looked like a house from TV and rolled around on the carpet. They also stopped the habit of throwing half-eaten snacks around. Noah and Emma didn't particularly thank me, but since I took the initiative, I wasn't bothered by it. However, I was unaware that Emma rather than appreciating my efforts, was making comments like, "What's that sarcasm, mother-in-law?" And no one in the family complained or even asked for it. I overheard this one night when I got up to use the bathroom and heard Noah and Emma drinking and talking. Noah sided with Emma, saying things like, "Don't say that," and "I wouldn't have taken my retired mom without Dad's insistence." Feeling down and wondering where I went wrong in raising him, I silently returned to my room. Seeing myself sleeping quietly, surrounded by luggage in a dimly lit room, I felt pathetic. However, thinking of my grandchildren growing up in such an unhygienic environment, I consoled myself that what I did was right and went to sleep. From then on, whenever I was cleaning, Emma pretended not to notice and went elsewhere. Moreover, the meals were always just meat and bread. Unable to stand it, I suggested making a stew dish and mentioned wanting to eat vegetables. Emma became upset and said, "Do as you please, but buy the ingredients yourself," and turned away. After that, she left the cooking to me and stopped cooking altogether. The grandchildren, possibly vitamin deprived, seemed to improve in complexion, enthusiastically eating fruits and vegetables. Being fond of the person who served them meals, they began to be affectionate towards me, making requests like, "Grandma, put a fried egg on the curry." One day, when Emma was out late, a grandchild crawled into my bed to sleep with me. From then on, they wanted to sleep with me even when their parents were home. This probably upset Emma even more. I ended up preparing all the meals, and this lifestyle continued for about 6 months. Then, a family trip during the summer vacation came up. My eldest son and his wife were excitedly looking at travel brochures and searching on the computer, so I assumed I'd be staying behind and was actually relieved. However, my eldest grandchild suddenly approached and insisted, "Grandma's coming too, right?" Despite their reluctance, they agreed since the child was adamant. Emma, clearly displeased, tasked me with preparing breakfast boxes and doing laundry, emphasizing that it was the least I could do since I was invited. The trip involved a car journey, but being elderly, I frequently needed restroom breaks, which visibly irritated Noah and Emma. The grandchild who had insisted on my accompanying them started to rush the journey. When Noah reprimanded the child, saying it was their fault, the child began to cry loudly. The car's atmosphere worsened with Emma muttering complaints amid the traffic jam. Upon reaching the amusement park, I distanced myself, saying, "I'll be at the cafe, you all have fun." When the children cheered up and ran to the rides, Emma came back to remind me explicitly to pay for my own expenses. The amusement park didn't seem like a place for an elderly person, and the cafe began to get crowded, so I, feeling guilty, stepped outside and mindlessly sat on a bench. Though I had worn a hat as a precaution, the midsummer sun was harsh. Before I knew it, I found myself in the amusement park's medical room. I overheard my elder son and his wife being scolded by someone who looked like a doctor. "How can you just leave an elderly person alone like that?" It seemed I had a mild heat stroke. Usually, I'd be fine, but having prepared lunch and done laundry from early morning, followed by the long ride, had taken its toll. I must have been more exhausted than I realized. My eldest son and his wife looked clearly upset and decided to head back to the hotel with me. After checking in and leading me to the room, they told me, "Please don't cause any more trouble. We shouldn't have brought you. We'll be out playing tonight. Just eat something or whatever." And then they left for the amusement park again. Feeling dizzy, I laid down in the quiet room and began to ponder what I was doing with my life. I'd always been too busy with household chores and looking after my grandchildren to have such thoughts. This vacation was clearly not planned with my well-being in mind. Despite having forced me to prepare meals and do laundry early in the morning, there was no concern shown for my health after I fell ill. I gazed at the ceiling and thought, if I were to grow old and fall seriously ill, they would probably leave me unattended like this. Even now, when I manage the household, I'm treated as a burden. I realized I had harbored hopes for the son I bore with such love and pain, but those hopes were misplaced. I decided I might need to prepare myself for the worst and drifted into sleep. Around 6:00 p.m., I heard my grandchild's voice. "Grandma, are you okay?" Emma looked at me with concern. She seemed to have come back from the amusement park early because she was worried about me. Behind her, her parents were whispering amongst themselves. Emma said, "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to Grandma. Can you stay with the kids for a bit?" Since there were play areas in the hotel, she took the younger children with her. Once they were gone, Emma snapped, "You should know better. Isn't it a luxury for someone like you to be on vacation? You should go home and clean since you're so good at it." The trip was planned for 2 more days, including visits to the amusement park, botanical gardens, and museums. I had thought I could partake in the rest of the trip. I asked, "Do you want me to go back now by train?" My innocent question was met with anger. My elder son replied, "What else do you expect? We only took you in because of Dad's last wish. Don't think you can freeload on the vacation." That statement solidified a vague resolution that had been forming in my mind. I should cut ties with them. I got up, packed my things, and asked the front desk to call a taxi. My grandchildren noticed and came over. I thought this might be our last meeting, so I said, "I'm not feeling well, so I'm going home early. Enjoy yourselves." They seemed to sense something was amiss, but simply replied with a smile, "Okay, get well soon." I gave the taxi driver my home address. He asked, "Are you sure you want to go that far?" I showed him my platinum card and asked if it was all right to pay with it. He thanked me and drove me home quietly, ensuring I was comfortable. Once home, I began to clean. I decided to move back to my old condo, which was up for rent, but fortunately still vacant. The next day, after packing my belongings, I left my son's house and called a real estate agent. I said, "I want to sell that house." A week later, my son was furious on the phone after a disagreement with the real estate agent who came for the house's evaluation. I went to their house and calmly said, "I've decided to cut ties with you guys, so I've also decided to sell this house. After all, the key to cleaning is to throw away unnecessary things." Both my eldest son and Emma looked puzzled, exclaiming, "Wait, wasn't this Dad's house? I should have inherited it from his estate. This is supposed to be my husband's property, right? What the hell are you doing? Have you lost your mind?" I sighed and asked my eldest son, "You say you inherited it through the estate. Do you remember changing the ownership of this house?" He hesitated. "No, but I just assumed it became mine." "That's not the case," I said. I replied, "Because this house is under my name." The two of them looked baffled, asking, "What do you mean?" "That's what I mean," I continued. "Also, prepare yourself because I'm going to stop the financing to your company." "Financing? What are you talking about?" My son's forgetfulness had always been a problem, but this was truly astounding. "Don't you remember?" I asked. "Every month, I've been transferring money to your bank account. It was under the agreement that you'd use it for business expenses." Noah turned pale and stammered, "I thought that money was what Emma earned." Emma was also shocked and confronted, "No, you weren't the one earning it." When Noah and Emma got married, he didn't have enough capital, so being fond of my grandson, I decided to provide financing. Since it would likely be considered an inheritance if it was under an individual's name, I set up a personal asset management company to make the investment. I believed I had explained it to Noah properly. However, since he started his business around the time he got married, as time passed, he must have mistaken it for Emma's income. Coincidentally, the name of the company sounded similar to Emma's beauty salon, which probably added to the confusion. Noah then suddenly exclaimed, "Wait, there were investments even after Dad passed away. So it's not Dad's company." "I've been telling you, I'm the CEO of that company," I responded. Noah was stunned, looking at me as if a vision had just been shot. Emma was equally shocked, her mouth agape. I kept silent because I didn't want to interfere, but now things have changed, I explained. "I didn't want to tarnish your father's reputation, but the one who had the assets was me," I continued. "My parents were wealthy. We got married almost against my parents' wishes. Noah, you never met my parents, but over time, we reconciled, and I inherited their assets when they passed. This inheritance was considered personal property, so it didn't become joint property with your father." Noah exclaimed, "Wait, what? Hold on, wasn't it something Dad had?" "As I've told you repeatedly, your father had almost no inheritance," I replied. It was natural to assume that one would inherit from their father, so knowing Emma's confusion was understandable. However, thinking one would inherit without any formal procedures makes me doubt my son's intellect. Initially, the reason Noah started his business was that he'd get fired wherever he worked. Noah would say, "They just don't see my worth." We weren't sure how to help, but we thought that letting him have free rein with the inheritance wouldn't end well, so we kept providing capital and loans. Noah mistakenly thought of it as Emma's income and used it for living expenses and his business. Meanwhile, Emma's beauty salon business wasn't going well, and she had almost no income. However, she seemed to be carelessly relying on Noah's perceived earnings. Noah said, "I thought I was going to inherit this house. I always listened to what Dad said." Emma exclaimed, "Wait, wasn't this house under your name?" The renovation was finished, so I thought you bought it. Emma, spitting in anger, glared hatefully at Noah. I was utterly exasperated with the two of them. From now on, you two will have to handle your own matters, I declared, preparing to leave. Just then, Emma grabbed my shoulder tightly. Mother-in-law, she trembled. Don't you care about your precious grandchildren? Coldly, I replied, we can choose our parents. I may have made mistakes raising my child, but indulging you further won't be good for my grandchildren either. With that, I left. Behind me, Noah and Emma were bitterly blaming each other. It's your fault. What about you? In the end, the house was sold. Lacking operational funds, Noah's business went bankrupt shortly after, and the couple divorced. Neither of them wanted custody, so I became the guardian of their children. As for Noah and Emma, they disappeared, and I have no idea where they are or what they're doing. With proper discipline, the oldest grandchild learned to cook, the middle one picked up cleaning, and the youngest mastered tidying up. They seem to have learned that they must fend for themselves. Now, without my intervention, the three of them cooperate and handle household chores efficiently. They likely regard their parents as cautionary tales. I'm grateful that I was able to pass on essential lessons to my grandchildren. Besides their housework and studies, they also care for me.